seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Have any of you seen any coverage of this case in the media? Did you hear anything, see anything? Did anyone speak to you about this case whatsoever? I see no hands. Mr. Nurmi, you may continue with direct examination. Ms. Arias, you are still under oath. Do you understand?
Good morning, Mr. Arias.
Good morning.
Before we talk about the break-in at your grandparents' home, I just want to go over a few more text messages this morning. In that regard, I want to talk about a text message conversation you had with Mr. Alexander on February 25th. Your Honor, if I may approach. Do you recognize those
Yes.
text messages? Okay. Based on your review of those, were you planning on spending time with Mr. Alexander that day?
Yes, that's after I was driving back from visiting with Gus Searcy. I was going to meet up with Travis.
Sustained rephrase.
Was it your plan, based on what you saw in those text messages, was it your plan to spend time with Mr. Alexander that day?
Yes.
And was it your plan, or were you anticipating that sexual activity would be a part of what was to take place when you met Mr. Alexander that day?
Yes.
And do you remember when these text messages took place?
It was late February. I think that said the 25th.
Okay.
But it depends on the time. It's 7 hours ahead.
And where were you?
On the road.
Okay. On the road near where?
Maybe somewhere around the Hoover Dam, I think.
Okay. I'm going to move for the admission of Exhibit 442.
No objection.
442 is admitted.
Now, on that day, you reference a message, the second message down. You talk about a schoolgirl outfit, and then you reference the Spider-Man undies. Was that a reference to the underwear you received for Valentine's Day?
Yes.
Looking at the prior message, was it Mr. Alexander's preference that your vagina be hairless?
Yes.
Did he ever explain why?
He just said he doesn't like hair.
Okay. The next conversation I want to show you is exhibit for the record 443. That was a text conversation you had with Mr. Alexander on March 30th, if I may approach. take a look at that, Ms. Arias, and see if you recognize that.
Yes.
And when did that text conversation begin on the 30th, and when did it end?
It began on, it says 1650.
Evidence, if she can tell us after looking at that, but not from the item.
Sustained.
In terms of date and time, Ms. Arias, do you remember when that conversation ended?
Ended?
Yes.
It ended on the same day, which would be the 30th, it would be 10:38, even though it says 17:38. It's Greenwich time here. But
Do you remember where you were when you were having this text conversation?
no, I don't remember. I was probably at my house. I was here, I was in Mesa, I know that. I hadn't moved yet.
You spoke the other day of a conversation where you hung up on Mr. Alexander. Is this a discussion about that conversation?
Yes.
And refresh our memories, it's been a few days. Why did you hang up on him?
He was swearing at me.
Your Honor, I'm going to move that Exhibit 443 be looked into evidence.
Objection, hearsay.
Approach, please.
Ms. Arias, if you could just read Exhibit 443 to yourself for us for a moment.
Okay.
Ms. Arias, during that string of text messages, do you see where you apologize to Mr. Alexander and tell him to have a great day?
Yes. Yes.
Why do you do that?
I just wanted to end this this thing going back and forth, and I said just tried to sign off, kind of.
And the confrontation?
Yes.
How did this confrontation affect you?
It makes me, well, like I said, whenever he would get angry, I started shaking again. So it would bother me in that regard. And it was like, whenever he got mad, it was like being in an earthquake. Like it starts and you don't know how long it's going to last or how bad it's going to get until it's all done. So I just didn't want it to get as bad as some of our arguments and fights have gotten in the past. Even though we were 1,000 miles apart, it's still, you know, his words are worse sometimes, usually.
And Ms. Arias, could you take a look at the back? What exhibit number is that? Just
443.
Judge, at this time I'm going to move to admit Exhibit 443.
Same objection, hearsay.
Let's sustain the objection without more foundation.
You said even though you were 1,000 miles away, it still affected you, right?
Yes.
Were you afraid?
Yes, I was afraid, not for my physical safety, but just afraid of, intimidated by him.
What were you afraid of?
I was afraid that he would get angrier and start, maybe that he would continue to swear at me in the text messages, or that he would just start calling me names again, or I don't know, when he got angry, it just kept on and on and on until he was done blowing off all his steam.
Is there a way for you to describe for us how that affected you so deeply?
It was just, I felt bullied, like it was just miserable because, I don't know, I didn't stop talking to him, but we would talk and then he would be nice and then he would be mean and then he would be nice and then he would be mean. It was just, I don't know, it just really affected me. I can't really describe it.
Was there anything about what he said in these text conversations that affected you that day?
This one particular?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Just yes or no? Yes.
Yes.
Again, Your Honor, I'm going to move to enter in Exhibit 443.
Again, lack of foundation and hearsay.
Approach, please. 443 is admitted.
Ms. Arias, if you'd be so kind as to take a look at Exhibit 443. Look at the bottom of page 72. At text message 4569, where you say, "I'm sorry, have a great day." That's what
Yes.
we're referring to a moment ago?
Yes.
Okay. And based on what you told us, it was your hope that this would lead to an end in the confrontation, and it did it?
Not right away, no.
And as it relates to the exhibits, the outgoing, based on what you testified to earlier, the outgoing messages, the outgoing messages relate to what he says to you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you could begin reading what he said to you on page 73, that being text message 11857.
Read it.
Yes, please.
You stressing me out on a daily basis is getting really freaking old. You cry over everything and you dump countless bull crap on me. I wasn't appreciative of another thing to deal with because of you. It's easy crap to fix, but you like to ruin every day of mine and I'm tired of it. You texting about something time sensitive is just a way to reel me back into the bull crap. Otherwise, you would have just told me. I'm sick of your soap opera and your ways. You purposely try to ruin every day. It seems you're getting good at it.
How do you respond?
Read my response?
Yes.
I'm just as tired of your hateful words. Do you think it's a day in the park for me when you're mean? I was just bragging to a girlfriend about how awesome and cool you are.
What does he say in response?
If you're tired of me, leave me alone.
And your response?
Whatever, Travis.
Do you say more than whatever, Travis?
Yes.
What else do you say?
I hope you realize you got upset over nothing. I was just telling you about one thing. I was still half asleep, and the next thing I knew, you were raising your voice and swearing. If I had been more coherent, then maybe I wouldn't have hung up on you. I hate that you're right. Maybe I would have made a better decision. But I've already apologized twice, and you not once. You're just choosing to be stubborn and remain pissed off.
Does he respond to that?
Yes.
Do me a favor, then take a look at text message number 11859. I believe it's on the last page of the exhibit. Tell us how he responds.
I don't ever want to get another freaking text from you again or a call unless it's an apology and a thank you for constantly having to take on your never-ceasing problems, not one freaking more.
And that was on March 30th of 2008, correct?
Yes.
After March 30th of 2008, do you speak or text with him again?
Yes.
When?
Later that day, or maybe shortly thereafter, a couple hours.
And was there any discussion about this fight?
I don't think we discussed the details anymore. It was just apologies.
Okay. Now I want to talk to you about a text message conversation you had with Mr. Alexander on the 7th of April, 2008, all right?
Okay.
And this would have been after you had moved away from Mesa, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I was still on the road on that date.
Okay. And that was the night you were in Hollister spending the night with your sister, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. If I may approach, Your Honor? I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 444. If you could be so kind, Ms. Arias, as to review this exhibit. Read it to yourself.
Yes,
You recognize the conversation?
I do, but it was actually on the 6th that it took place.
Okay. So the difference being the difference in time that we talked about previously with text messages?
Yeah, they're 7 hours ahead.
Your Honor, I'm going to move to have Exhibit 442 moved into evidence.
Objection, hearsay relevance.
Counsel, why don't you approach? Ms. Arias, I'm going to ask that you move your microphone to your right. Thank you. You may proceed.
Again, Ms. Arias, what I'm showing you is Exhibit 442. Let's talk a little bit about,
Excuse me, Mr. Nermy, I think it's 444. Would you look at that document?
Yes, 444.
my apologies, Your Honor. Let's take a look at, I want to talk a little bit about the circumstances, things that were going on the 6th, without telling us what was said in these text messages. If you could review them and just tell us what was going on between yourself and Mr. Alexander, looking at the text messages, referring specifically to the text messages on page 77.
I was on the road after leaving Mesa with my U-Haul truck. He wanted to know where I was and how far that was from Wairika. I let him know.
And you were moving, what you told us earlier, you were moving to get away from him, right?
Yes, that was one of the main reasons.
And he contacts you the same day, and this is the day that he flipped you off as you were driving away. Is that correct, what you told us earlier?
I think it was the next day. I think I slept in the truck one of those nights.
Okay. And then looking at this exhibit, there appears to be a gap in time between message 12295 and message 12308. Can you explain that gap in time for us?
Yeah, it looks like it's 2 hours and 18 minutes, if I did my math right.
Were you just driving and not responding or sleeping or what was
No,
going on?
I was at my sister's house already. We had texted, kind of said goodnight sort of thing, and I went to sleep.
Okay. And you woke up then to text message 12308?
Yes, it came through broken up in many text messages. It was really long.
So was your phone not on silent, or did this message actually wake you up, or did you wake up and check your phone?
It woke me up because it kept beeping because so many kept coming through. It wasn't on silent.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm going to move to Exhibit 444.
Counsel, please approach.
Ms. Arias, drawing your attention back to this gap in time between text message 12295 and text message 12308. You mentioned you were at your sister's house and then you went to sleep, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just to clarify then, you didn't have any conversations with Mr. Alexander, be it through instant messages or telephone, between these text messages. Is that correct?
Definitely not their instant message, and I'm pretty sure we didn't have any phone calls between that time.
Okay. So you're spending time with your sister and you woke up to text message 12308. Is that right?
Yes, I was staying in a separate bedroom and I had gone to sleep by then.
Judge, I'm going to again move to admit Exhibit 444.
Exhibit 444 is admitted.
I want to discuss now with you the text message that you woke up to when you were in Hollister with your sister. Had you told Mr. Alexander you were moving away to try to get him out of your life?
No, I wouldn't have told him that.
Why not?
Well, I told him that we should need to spend more time apart, but not to get him out of my life.
Okay. But that's what you wanted.
Not to get him out of my life. I wanted us to be able to have a healthy friendship.
And again, just so it doesn't show up here, we're talking about April, at this time then, we're talking about April 7th, or early morning hours?
It would have been the 6th, 4, 3, 2, 1, 12. Like, I think 10 or
Okay.
11 at night.
Okay. So you woke up to this message, says, do not call me, do not text me anything. And is this, there's reference to Michelle K. Is that the fight you talked about earlier? He was mad that somebody was saying something about him or outing him as dating other women. Is that correct?
Yeah, her name was Maria, not Michelle. She mentioned he had been dating Lisa.
He says, after tomorrow, it's going to be really bad for you. Let me get it here. He says, after tomorrow, it's going to be really bad for you. Time to spit it out. What was he referencing?
He wanted to know who Marie was. I didn't know who she was. She came into my work. I worked at Ruby Tuesdays. She was sitting in another person's section, and I brought her some food, and she recognized me. So there was no way I could find out who she was. She was there and gone. We didn't get into details about his life like he had thought. He just mentioned, oh yeah, Travis had dated Lisa, which brought up the conversation. And so that's what he wanted me to spit out was, who is Marie, basically.
And when he said it was going to get real bad for you, what is the context of that? Was there something behind that threat?
I imagine there was, but I couldn't imagine what it was, but I didn't know what he was capable of, so that bothered me, it worried me.
He says, I promise you the punishment will be better than the lie. To your understanding, what did he mean by that?
I don't know. He just,
Judge's speculation.
Had he threatened to do something to you outside of this conversation?
not up to this point, he hadn't.
Okay.
So I didn't know what he was talking about.
want to talk to you now about a text message conversation you had with Mr. Alexander on April 8th, 2008. I'm going to hand you what's been marked Exhibit 445. You can just review that to yourself, please.
Okay.
Have you read them all?
Yes, I've read them.
Do you recognize them?
Yes.
Without telling us exactly what was said, what was the context of the conversation on April 18th?
I had left town, obviously. I think I was just back in Wairika, and he discovered that I left a drawing behind that he gave me, and it really made him mad. It was just something I forgot as I was moving, and it upset him.
And this is what we talked about last week, this drawing that he had signed.
Yes.
And in terms of his, you talked about the conversation. What affected the anger that he displayed during this text conversation? What did it have on you? Did it have that same shaking effect we've been talking about?
Yeah, it did. I just wanted to get him calmed down and explain to him that that wasn't intentional, that it was an accident that I forgot.
Your Honor, I'm going to move that Exhibit 445 be admitted into evidence.
I don't have any objection to, if the foundation that we talked about is there, I don't have any objection to the majority of it. However, the end portion of the text message talks about Sedona and
Judge, if we're going to have this complex a discussion, we should have it at bench.
Right.
Okay. Ms. Arias, do us a favor and let me draw your attention to page 79 of that exhibit, or what is denoted as 79 of 132. And drawing your attention again to 12332. And you're having the discussion about this, this signed item. Could you tell us what he says to you in text message 12332?
He says, "Do not call back." It's a typo, I think. "I'm sick of you playing stupid and dealing with childish tactics."
And do you respond to that before he texts you again?
No, it doesn't. Well, I might have been typing a response, but another response or another text message came through before I could respond.
What was the next message you received from him? Could you read that to us?
Yes. "It was some stupid ass way of ruining yet another of mine, which you have done so much of. Bitter feelings are brewing in me towards you. I'm sick of having days ruined by you. If it keeps up, I fear I will have a genuine dislike for you. I'm asking you before it gets to that to stop doing it, before I start seeking revenge. Your account with me is overdrawn. P.S. You need to start paying me back, so you better start looking for a job."
And paying you back, is that a reference to the BMW?
Yes.
Okay. Drawing your attention to text message 5044, your response was to apologize to him, is that right?
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, if drawing your attention to page 80 is you apologize again and tell him, "Don't worry, be happy." Is that right?
It's one text message broken up 3 times, and it looks like it was sent twice,
Okay.
probably on accident.
But that was the substance of one of the things you said to him, right?
Yes.
Okay. Drawing your attention to page 81 of 132 in this exhibit, text message 12335. After you apologize, this text message came after you apologized to him, is that correct?
Yes.
Could you read that for us?
"It's just always something, Jodi. It just gets old. If it was hard for you to take because of sentimental reasons, you shouldn't have asked me to sign it and then made me sign it in ink right away. To leave it after all that was rude and inconsiderate to me, which has been a common trend from you lately. You say you meant to get it, but even if that's true, you put it there so you could leave it and knew it would upset me, but you simply don't care. Just like wasting an entire week of my life sending me on a wild goose chase based on a lie. You just didn't care to be considerate on how all that affects me. I'm trying to save my house, build a business amidst so much conflict, and you don't care about anything that doesn't involve you. It's very upsetting, and I'm tired of it. I don't want to deal with anything big or little that is some stupid ploy. You're not sorry. If you were, you wouldn't continue onward with this stuff. I'm just asking you to think of me. If you would have thought of me for 1 second, you wouldn't have left that there. Imagine if I did that to you with something you gave me. You'd cry for weeks. Just give me a pardon from any madness. I don't need it. It wearing me out, and if it continues, just like I have to give you motivation to tell me the truth, I'll give you motivation to quit screwing with me."
And do you know what that motivation was?
I don't. I mean,
Okay.
I probably imagine the worst.
How did you respond, going back to the next page? There are, referring you to text message 5053, 5054, 5055, and 5057. Could you read those for us? I know that they are, could you read it to us in the order which you typed them? I know they didn't come in that way, but if you could just read it in the order you typed them.
Yeah, the first three you mentioned is, there are only 3 of 4 that showed up. The second one never came through, so it'll
Okay.
be broken up. Never to deliberately upset you, hun. Sorry again. I was just confused in so many ways. I feel like since I left AZ, a fog has lifted and things seem so much. The next message is missing and it goes on to 3. Both have a lot to recover from, but also a lot to be happy about and thankful for. I love you. Things are only getting better now. I know it. I haven't felt this good in so long. I almost forgot what it was like.
What do you mean when you said you hadn't felt this good in so long? What was that a reference to?
I just felt more like I was like my old self again when I got back to Wairika, and like I was just living in this fog, this almost like a suicidal fog the whole time I was in Arizona, and it was like almost like getting oxygen to get out of there.
Did these conversations you had with Mr. Alexander, did they draw you back into that fog?
Yes.
Looking at text message 5060 on that same page, there's a reference to a phone call. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
You say, thank you for calling, and say that was very nice of you. This phone call then, was Mr. Alexander once again apologetic?
Yes, he was apologetic. I mean, he felt justified, but he was apologetic and he was nicer. I forgot to read one of the text messages that you asked me to read.
Which one was that?
5057.
Okay, go ahead and read that for us.
It just says, now that that's all behind us, let us just chalk up that drawing to one last ditzy thing. I honestly forgot to grab it after I put it there. I think it's the second part of the text message didn't come through.
Okay. So just to clarify then, what you're saying here and what your testimony is that you didn't not bring this item with you, this signed item with you, out of some evil intent to ruin Mr. Alexander's day. Is that right?
Objection, text and answer given speaks for itself, leading.
Sustained.
Did you forget this drawing out of a desire to ruin Mr. Alexander's day?
No,
As a matter of fact, you didn't want to do anything that would incur his anger at all, did you?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Did you want Mr. Alexander to be angry with you?
no, never.
Because you'd start shaking if he did, didn't you?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Would you start shaking if he got mad at you?
Yeah, it depended on his fury and his wrath.
When he swore at you?
Yes,
When he called you a whore?
yes,
A slut?
yes,
That made you shake. You were scared, right?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Were you scared?
yes,
Did you like it when he called you a three-hole wonder?
no.
Let's talk about a conversation you had with Mr. Alexander on the 19th of April, 2008, that has been marked Exhibit 446. And if you could just do us a favor and read that to yourself.
Yes.
Do you remember let me ask you this first. What was the subject matter of this text conversation?
I was telling him a story on the phone, and he asked me to get to the point, and I think my feelings were hurt, so I said something to the effect of, like, I always listen to him when he wants to tell a story, even if it goes a long time.
And was that well received by him?
No.
And you were living in Wairika at the time of these text messages?
Yes.
His anger still affected you then on April 19th, 2008?
Sustained.
Did his anger still affect you on April 19th, 2008?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to move to admit Exhibit 446.
No objection if his avowal stands that he'll tie it up later.
Is that correct, Mr. Nuri?
That is, Your Honor.
446 is admitted.
Jodi, I'm going to hand you back Exhibit 446. In case you need to refer back to it. During this conversation, you recall there was some discussion regarding his public speaking, or you were commenting on his public speaking, correct?
Yes.
How did that come to, was your feedback something that he asked for?
No.
Why was it offered?
I think because he criticized me and told me to hurry up, so.
He criticized you for what?
For taking too long to
Taking too long to what?
say what I was telling him.
Okay. And how did that lead to talking about his public speaking skills? Or you speaking, excuse me, about his public speaking skills?
I tried to make a joke and tell him that I said, you're a little long-winded yourself sometimes when you're speaking.
And that was the part that wasn't well received by you, is that right?
Yes,
Or by him, excuse me.
that's correct.
Did he want to talk to you anymore after that?
Eventually, yes.
But during that text conversation, did he want to end the conversation?
He kept saying that, I think, but he kept texting me, so.
Okay. During this text conversation as well, he wanted you to do something or do a project for him. What was that project?
He wanted me to upload some photos, shrink the file size, and email them to him.
And were you still working for him? I mean, were you still getting paid to do activities for him?
No,
Okay. He was just asking you to do this as a favor, I guess?
right, as a favor.
Okay. And in this text conversation, it sounds like you were doing something else instead. What was that?
I was editing wedding photos at the moment.
You say wedding photos. Where did these photos come from?
I photographed my cousin's wedding in March, and I was coming up on almost a month of her not having the photos yet, and I just had 12 more to go, and I wanted to get her the CDs so she could have her wedding photos.
So in this conversation was Mr. Alexander, and this was your budding business, so this is what you wanted to be your business, wedding photography, part of it anyway, right?
Yes, it was my fledgling business.
Okay. Did Mr. Alexander get upset with you, as demonstrated by these text messages, for putting your business interests ahead of his desires to have this work done?
That's what the text messages say.
Restate your question.
You've reviewed these text messages, right?
Yes.
Did he get angry that you put your own business interests in front of his own desires?
Yes, he wanted me to drop what I was doing and do his photos real fast.
But you didn't have time because you had your own work to do. Is that fair to say?
Sustained.
Let's talk about another conversation you had with him. Well, let me ask you this, just as a follow-up. After this text conversation, the one we were just referring to, did you wind up doing the project for Mr. Alexander?
Not that night.
Okay. When did you wind up doing it?
It got done eventually, probably, I don't know when. All I know is that night my computer froze and it wouldn't unfreeze.
Okay. Why did you do that project for him?
He was trying to start a Facebook page for his dog, and I took pictures of Napoleon, and he wanted those photos. So he could have photos on the Facebook page of Napoleon.
Okay, that explains to me why he wanted it. What I was asking you is why were you doing it for him as opposed to him taking care of his own business?
I don't think he didn't have a nice camera, and I had good photos, and I liked taking pictures and sharing them, and I wasn't going to keep them. It was his dog, so I wanted him to have them. He wanted them for the Facebook page, so that's why I did them.
Okay. Now, show you what's been marked as Exhibit 447. I'll trade you that. If you could just read that to yourself, please.
Okay.
Do you recognize these text messages?
Yes.
And these were, it appears, a day or two after the conversation we were just referring to. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it finishes up that conversation, then moves into the next day, and then the next day and the next day.
Your Honor, I'm going to move to admit Exhibit 447.
objection as to the date, if we could just have a date when this happened.
When did these text messages take place on this exhibit?
They're dated April 19th through April 22nd.
I move to admit, Your Honor.
No objection. Again, with the avowal that they will be tied up later.
The vowel was previously made, Mr. Attorney.
It still stands, Your Honor.
Exhibit 447 is admitted.
Jodi, I want to show you, before I show you the whole thing, text message 12661. It's part of this exhibit. And this happened on 4/19 of 2008. You can see here he says, sounds like a clever story for not doing it, kind of funny, everything went fine, but mine, and it all goes to hell, very fishy. Just forget it. I know how you operate. Is that related to the wedding photos you were just talking about and doing his photographic work?
Yes.
Okay. There is a text message, the number's there, 5359. You tell him thanks for apologizing. Did he call you and apologize?
I don't remember if he called or if we texted it. There are a lot of missing text messages, but either way, he apologized after that argument.
And then after saying, I know how you operate, and being mad at you for putting your own interests in front of his, he says that you are one of the prettiest girls on the planet, right?
Yes.
Kind of puts you back in the fog, doesn't it?
Stand.
Did that put you back in the fog?
I was more in the fog when he was sending me mean text messages.
Let me put it this way, it kept you in the relationship, didn't it?
Yes.
Did this kindness and affection that he showed you, did that help reel you back in?
It made me feel better about associating with him.
I want to talk to you now about a text message conversation you had with Mr. Alexander on May 10th of 2008 that's contained in what's been marked as Exhibit 448. Just take a look at those and read them over to yourself.
Yes.
What was the subject matter, if you will, of this string of text messages?
I made a grave error and sent a text message to his phone that was supposed to go to Steve Carroll.
And this is the individual you were speaking about last week, someone you were chatting with on, I believe it was LDS Link-Up, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And when did this series of text messages that you see in this exhibit, when did they begin and when did they end?
The misdirected text message, it actually was on the 9th, not the 10th. It started on the evening of the 9th and all the way to the apology about 3 hours later. A little over 3¼ hours later.
And I'm going to move to admit Exhibit 448.
Objection, lack of foundation. Again, the relevance, the effect on her.
Sustained on the last part.
You sent this text message to him or inadvertently, right?
Yes.
And he was angry?
Yes, he got angry.
How did that affect you?
Like, can I tell what was going through my mind or?
Yeah, what was going through your mind? I mean, what's the big deal? You're not dating him anymore. You're chatting with a guy on LDS Link Up. Why are you concerned if this message inadvertently goes to Mr. Alexander?
Because of how he had reacted in the past when I told him about, well, right before moving, when I told him all about Abe and he got really upset. And I told him about Sam, this other guy.
Need a litany.
She's describing how it affected her, Judge.
Earl, you may continue.
And then I also told him about Sam. So he was very angry about all of those things and accused me of lying to him about Abe and everything else thereafter. So when I sent him that, I really got nervous because I hit cancel, but because it was 2 messages. It was 1 message broken up into 2, and I hit cancel, but not in time for the first one to go through. So I thought, it just, because I hadn't told him about Abe, and then even though we weren't dating at the time, and I didn't tell him about Sam, even though we weren't dating at the time, now there's Steve. And so it's just, I feel like I was just living up to what he was saying I was, because now I'm trying to talk to this guy, but I'm not telling him, and now it gets misdirected, and it was just, everything blew up, and it was totally the worst thing that I could have done that day. Instead of sending it to Steve, it went to Travis on accident.
Well, you were single. What was the big deal?
I don't know. I mean, I knew he was trying to date Mimi during that time, or at least I thought. And we had moved away, but I don't know. He just didn't react well to those things.
And you were still concerned about angering him. Is that accurate to say?
Objection made.
Let me answer.
Yes.
I move to admit Exhibit 448.
Again, the foundation. She's
Approach.
text message to Mr. Alexander instead of to Steve Carroll. Were you upset?
I was freaking out, actually,
Why?
because I just didn't want him to receive that.
Why?
It wasn't meant for him, and I was trying to keep my dating life separate somewhat because it never went well when he knew details about my social life.
Meaning it never went well, meaning he would get angry with you, right?
Actually,
Overruled.
By this point, yes, he would get angry. It started off as teasing me or clicking around on MySpace to find out who I was messaging, but then
Overruled. You may continue.
Please repeat that, Jody.
he just started off teasing me about things early in our relationship, and then he would start clicking around on my friend's network to find out like where I'd left messages, and then he would call me and mock the message that I left, like in a girly voice. Or if someone left a message on my page, he was all over it and wanted to know who, what, when, where, what the context behind it was. And so it just increased like that. And I mean, I guess East Mesa is kind of a small place, so at one point he saw me on a date with this other guy and he teased me about it later.
So you were hoping to avoid his anger about you dating or seeing other men, is that right?
Yeah, by this point it was just pure wrath.
Okay. I'm going to move to admit Exhibit 448.
no objection.
448.
Let's talk about text message 6572. You talk about his wrath. Was this the message, hey there, someone has my Google password because he's been helping me with some things on the Google blog, and it happens to be an ex-boyfriend? Is that the message that garnered Mr. Alexander's wrath?
Yeah, that was the first portion of the message.
Okay. And from what you told us earlier, the second portion didn't go through because you were able to stop that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Says, you and your Steve cover-up make me frickin' sick. What cover-up was there? Do you have any idea what this means?
He had got into my Gmail before and found an email from Steve, and I told him that we were just friends. So I think that's what he was referring to.
Okay. And he says, and I quote, "Why don't you have him come fuck you in the woods?" Is this again about Mr. Carroll?
Yes. And the Little Red Riding Hood thing that he wanted to do.
Okay. Back to 448, I just have a few more questions to ask you about that. Exhibit, if you could do me a favor and turn your attention to page 1, what's denoted in this exhibit is page 118 of 132. After he tells you, after he references you having sex with Mr. Carroll, it's in text message 6576, what is your response?
Read it?
Yes, please. It looks like there are 3 text messages in that response. Is that correct?
It's one message broken up into 3.
Okay, fair enough. Could you please read those sequentially then?
Yes. Please don't give me any more grief about Steve or anyone else. I still love you bunches, and I'm doing what I think will help me move on. I haven't asked you about any girls in your life recently. Let's just adopt a don't ask, don't tell policy when it comes to that stuff, and we'll both be better off. Don't you agree?
So after the message, you still love him and you're apologetic.
Yes. Yes.
Let me direct your attention to what is denoted as page 119 of 132. Which is end message 14090. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And that was from Travis to you, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Could you read that message for us?
He writes, I freaking bet. I wonder what crap you send out that I don't get. I bet the second half of that email was a doozy. You are a real piece of work. By the way, thanks for keeping your end of the contract you made by paying me for the car you destroyed. You are more and more like your mom every day.
He mentions he says second half of email. To your understanding, was he referring to the second half of the text message?
Yes.
Did he want you to send that to him?
Yes, he wanted to see what it said. He wanted to know what it said.
And did he in fact demand to know what it said?
Yes.
Did you feel obligated to send it to him?
Yes.
Why?
Because I wanted him to know that what the rest said, I shouldn't have hit cancel. If I had known that only half would go through, I would have just let him read the whole thing.
But why did you feel obligated to share the second part with him?
Because he's speculating up here about how bad it could have been, and it wasn't bad. I just was telling him to email me on a different email.
Why did you feel that you had to justify anything to Mr. Alexander in May of 2008?
I don't know why.
Okay.
He just had it like that, I guess.
Did you send him that second text message, the second part?
Before I realized that hitting cancel,
Sustained.
Did you, let's just, to begin with, yes or no, did you send him a second half of the text message?
not that second half.
Okay. What do you mean by not that second half? Did you send him something else?
Yes.
What did you send him? Do you see it? Let me ask you this. Do you see it there reflected in that conversation?
Yes.
And which message are you referring to?
It's on page 126, 587.
It's page 126?
120. The message is 6587.
And could you read that for us?
It says, doesn't really make sense because it's broken up, but it carries over from ex-boyfriend, Jodi Arias at Hotmail. Well, it's supposed to say at, but it came through different. Jodi Arias at Hotmail for now. If you want, thanks.
And you created that to satisfy Mr. Alexander and to calm his wrath, as you described it?
Sustained.
Why did you send that text message? Why did you make that up?
Well, it wasn't really, this was the gist of what I had sent. I looked for the second half and it wasn't in my phone. Once I hit cancel, the message wasn't saved. So I couldn't find it, and he's putting the pressure on me. He kept sending me messages, and I'm trying to find this message in my phone. So I just typed that out real fast, because that's the gist of what it was. I was telling Steve to email me at my Hotmail instead of my Gmail for now.
I refer you to message 14098. It is the sole message on the page. I think it's the next to the last page in the exhibit. Do you see that there?
Yes.
How did this conversation end?
He says, "I'm sorry too, I love you."
That reel you back in?
Made me feel better.
Let's talk about one more thing about this exhibit. If you could take a look at page 121 or 132, which is the final page of the exhibit.
Okay.
What was the subject matter of that conversation?
I have a blank page on 121, so I don't know if I'm looking at the same thing as you.
Okay. Judge, perhaps we could take lunch recess.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, 125 in the jury room. Please remember the admonition. You are excused. Have a nice lunch.
Without telling me what was said on May 11, 2008, looking at Exhibit 449 and directing you to some of those messages, did he say nice things to you in those messages?
Yes.
Did those make you feel good about yourself?
Yes.
Did it make you, I think your words were, better about continuing the association with him?
Yes. Those are my words.
I'm going to move to admit Exhibit 449, Your Honor.
Usual stipulation or avowal, no objection.
Mr. Nermy.
Yes, Your Honor.
Exhibit 449.
Does your monitor work there, Ms. Arias?
Yes.
Would you be so kind as to read text message 14120 to us?
Honey, I think he meant to say, look beautiful in all your pics.
And that made you feel good?
Yes.
Can you read message 6631 to us?
Thanks, sweetie. You never failed to make me feel beautiful.
And the next one?
Plus, I just got your other pics downloaded and you are smoking hot in them.
And your response is yeah?
Yay, with a smiley face.
Is that an expression of the fact that you were happy that you had Mr. Alexander's approval for your pictures?
Overruled.
Yes.
It still meant a lot to you on May 11th, 2008, his approval?
Made me feel good.
And that feeling meant a lot to you, right?
It was preferable to the alternative.
The alternative being what?
How I felt when he was not being nice.
Okay. And that goes to the shaking and the fear?
Yes.
That's the alternative? What was the alternative, Ms. Arias?
Just the horrible feeling of when he's coming down on me and just feeling like I have to cower.
You still felt like you had to cower 1,000 miles away?
I did.
Ms. Arias, I want to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 450. If you could take a look at all those messages, please.
Yes, I remember these very well.
You say very well, why?
Because I remember that whole night pretty well.
Okay. Just so we're clear, that whole night, this is what day is this?
This was, it started the night of May 25th and moved into May 26th.
Okay.
Really?
And have you looked at all the exhibit, ma'am?
Yes.
And does that contain both, what that is the interaction between you and two via text message that day?
Yes. During this part of the day.
Okay. And you said you remembered that day well. Without going into what's in the text messages for the moment, what was going on the 25th and 26th of May between you and Mr. Alexander?
I called him. This is the time period where I sent him another pamphlet with those phone numbers on it for some kind of counseling or mental health services. And he got upset. So it started this fight, basically.
Okay. And this fight, did it take place, and we heard earlier in the trial, we heard the instant message interaction you had with Mr. Alexander where he called you a slut, a whore, and a three-hole wonder. Was that part of this fight?
Yes.
And were there phone conversations that day as well?
Yes.
And then these text messages that we just talked about in Exhibit 450, that was also part of this fight?
This was the start of it,
Okay,
sort of the beginning of the fight.
okay. And I'm going to move to admit Exhibit 450.
Same objection as before, lack of foundation, impact on the defendant.
Paint.
Did you feel good when he was saying those things he said to you on those text messages?
No.
Is that the wrath that you feared?
Yes, that was the beginning of it.
Did it make you shake?
Yeah, at first it did. Well, I was asleep actually when some of it started, so.
When you read them, did it make you shake?
Yes, it came through, and each time the phone would beep, it just made my anxiety build because I knew it was going to be, well, I assumed it was going to be something not nice.
Move to admit Exhibit 450, Your Honor.
With the avowal, no objection.
Exhibit 450 is admitted.
I want to speak with you, then, about some of the things that were included in his wrath. I want to draw your attention, Ms. Arias, specifically to the text message denoted as 14829. Can you see that on your screen?
Yes,
Okay. Can you read that for us?
yes. I sent you a response to your dire conversation that I hope you read because you need to read it. Maybe it will spark human emotion in you, something that only seems to exist when it comes to your own problems, but everyone else is just a part of your sick agenda. By the way, your pick comment to Danny Jones makes you look like a pure whore, even more to the people who know you. You should be embarrassed by it. But if he knew what I knew about you, he'd spit in your face. So would everyone else. I have never in my life been hurt so bad by someone. But why do I even say it? Because you don't care. It doesn't serve your evilness.
Before we move off that text message, I want to ask you a few questions. You said I sent you a response to your dire conversation. Was that something that happened verbally, or was that something that happened over some other form of communication?
It was verbal. He wanted me to text it, but I didn't want to talk about his issues in the text messages.
What do you mean his issues?
His sexual attraction to children.
It also says in here, your pit comment to Danny Jones makes you look like a whore, or excuse me, a pure whore. Was that the one regarding man boobs, the Anchorman reference you were speaking of last week?
Yeah, it was a joke.
Okay. Drawing your attention to the next message here, number 14830. You read that to us?
You couldn't get off your lazy butt to read it, could you? That's the sociopath I know so well. It freaking figures.
To your understanding, what's that a reference to?
Well, that's because the text message above that came through, and that time would be around 1 o'clock in the morning. So it woke me up, and I was asleep. And well, first he called me. He sent that and called me. And so when I answered the phone, and I tried to read through the text messages, but I was very groggy and I was disoriented. And so after I shut my phone, I was hesitant to get up anyway, because in order to look at the email he wanted to send me, I had to go into my grandmother's room, turn on her computer, and that would wake her up. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. The bright light from the monitor would wake her up, and she's older, so she has a hard time sleeping as it is. So I kind of laid there for a minute contemplating whether or not to do that, and I was very groggy, so I slipped right back into sleep and didn't get up. So he was mad because I didn't get up and read it.
And he refers to you there as a sociopath. How did that make you feel?
I don't know. He's called me worse things, I thought, so it didn't make me feel good, but it wasn't the worst that he's called me.
Drawing your attention, if you could read for us text message 14831.
I don't want your apology. I want you to understand what I think of you. I want you to understand how evil I think you are. You are the worst thing that ever happened to me.
How did that make you feel?
It made me feel not good, I guess. It made me feel yucky, I guess you could say.
Okay. You mentioned, I don't want your apology. Was there an apology text message that's missing here? Did you speak with him? What apology, to your understanding, is he referring to?
I apologize for not getting out of bed and going to read his email.
And how did you do that? Through text message?
It was either text or phone call. I was half asleep, but
Okay.
that's what I apologized for.
And why did you feel the need to apologize for not being able to read his email if it would mean waking up your grandmother? Why did you feel the need to apologize for that?
Well, we were kind of night owls anyway, so I don't think he understood what it would have meant for me to get out of bed and go at this hour right now and why we get to go look at that email. So I guess, I don't know, I used to be able to turn on my own laptop and get online or talk to him on the phone late at night, but this night I was sleeping and my grandparents were sleeping. So I just felt like I needed to apologize, I guess. I didn't want him to be mad that I didn't get up.
Sounds like you did a lot because you didn't want him to be mad. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
One last text message in that string referring you to 14832. After you apologize, could you read that one for us?
You are a sociopath. You only cry for yourself. You have never cared about me, and you have betrayed me worse than any example I could conjure. You are sick, and you have scammed me.
Do you know what he means by betrayed him? Did you, to your understanding, what that would mean? If you don't, that's fine.
I do. It has to do with, I promised him that I wouldn't tell anybody about his issues if he promised to get help. And another stipulation I made was that he couldn't stay the night at his friend's house because they have children, and until he got help. And so my understanding was that he did actually end up staying there, and I talked to him about it, and I reminded him that he needs to get help. And I also sent the pamphlet around the same time because he's on the tape fantasizing about anally raping a 12-year-old, and it just I wasn't going for 12-year-old, I was going for adult, even though, So just all these things. And it was very awkward. I didn't want to put it in text messages. I didn't want that kind of thing. But I think, well, he just
Objection.
stayed.
Explain further. You said he just what?
Overruled.
He was not happy that I kept pushing him because he wanted me to drop the subject. So back in January, I dropped the subject, assuming that he was going to take the necessary steps that he needed to take. And it was apparent, I didn't feel like he was taking those steps. So I was kind of, I guess you could say, pressuring him, not in a big way, but just urging him. And he didn't like that.
Okay. Now, in May of 2008, you're living at your grandparents' home. We've talked about that. Did you have your own room there?
Yes.
Okay. And where were you working in May of 2008?
May. I think I was working at Casa Ramos by then.
Okay. And this is a Mexican restaurant?
Yes, it's a Mexican family restaurant.
Did you ever refer to it as Margaritaville?
No, I thought that was a country song.
Okay. And what was the status? You talked about a few moments ago in regards to the text messages. We talked about your photography business. What was the status of that? Was it taking flight? Where was it?
My photography, I thought, was taking flight because it was the end of the school year. There were a lot of juniors going into their senior year, then they wanted photographs and portraits. So I had booked some of those and another wedding and also one in the fall. So I felt like it was starting, my calendar was starting to fill up a little bit as far as photography goes.
Okay. So your business is taking flight. You have a job. Why did you still feel the need to interact with Mr. Alexander or try to solve his issues by sending him these pamphlets and having these conversations with him?
Well, solving his issues, I wanted him to get him to solve his own issues, but I cared about him. And I mean, you're seeing the worst of it, but in between these times, he was very kind and he was very loving and he would apologize. And it seemed to counterbalance it because there were times when he was so sweet and so nice and he would praise me and compliment me and make me feel very special. And then he would get pissed off and say things like that.
And at this time in your life, May 2008, we talked about this a while ago, but specifically late May of 2008, what are your interests, if any, with Ryan Burns?
At that point, I just wanted to get to know him better. I didn't know how we would jive, if we would jive, if our personalities would mesh at all, I never even really, I didn't remember interacting with him in Oklahoma City. I had only seen a few photos of him on his mission in Africa on the internet, on his MySpace page, and that was it.
So, had you and Mr. Burns made any plans to get together?
Yes.
And when was that to take place?
That was to take place, eventually my trip to Utah was finalized for early June.
Okay. And was Utah your only destination, or were you going elsewhere?
I had a lot of destinations.
Okay, well, why don't we kind of go down the list of where you were planning on going?
Okay. To start?
Yeah, where were you? Well, let's talk about that. Where were you? What was your first destination going to be?
My first destination was going to be Monterey, California.
And when were you planning on leaving on for Monterey?
My plan was to drive to Monterey on the first day, stay the night, get up the next day and go.
No, but what day?
I would have left Monday morning the 2nd, early Monday.
Monday morning the 2nd, okay. Did anything happen between the text conversations and your plan to leave for the trip?
Yes.
What happened?
At the end of the text conversation you saw led to an online chat conversation that went on for hours, which eventually led to us getting off the phone and off the computer onto the phone, where he wanted more phone sex. And so at that point, after we calmed down from that, he was talking again about coming up so that he wanted to try this Little Red Riding Hood thing, and we were just determining when that would happen.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Do you remember your grandparents' home being broken into?
I wasn't there, but yes.
Okay. Do you remember about when that occurred?
Well, I understand it occurred May 28th, 2008.
Where were you Well, we heard testimony earlier that eventually you came to the house that day. Do you recall doing that?
Yes.
And do you recall what day that was?
May 28th.
To your recollection, who called you and advised you that the home had been broken into?
I don't know that who called me because someone had called my sister. We were out of cell phone range, and when we came back into cell phone range, her phone beeped because she had a voicemail, so she checked the voicemail, and that's when she said that what had happened, so we went straight home after that.
And where were you when you received the message that your grandparents' home had been broken into?
We were in Hilt. Hilt is a small town about, I think, like an eighth of a mile from the border. It's right on the border. And out of cell phone range, we were at a Buddhist monastery way out there.
You say border, to what border are you referring to?
The Oregon border.
So, and how far, refresh our memory, how far was the Oregon border from Wairika?
15, 20 minutes, depending on how fast you're driving.
Okay. So once you got this message, did you go straight back to your grandparents' home?
Yes.
Okay. Did you break into your grandparents' home to steal this gun?
No.
Did you orchestrate or have someone else break into your grandparents' home to steal the gun?
No, I did not.
We saw testimony and pictures about of your grandparents' home, and that were taken that day. Do you recall seeing those?
Yes.
Is it correct then you simply could have, had you wanted the gun, you could have just opened the cabinet and taken it?
I guess if I'd known it was there, I could have.
Okay. You did not know that they had this pistol?
No, I knew my grandfather had rifles and shotguns, but I didn't know he had a handgun.
When you learned of the burglary, did you learn that a handgun had been stolen, or did you learn that that handgun had been stolen?
Eventually, yes.
Did you know it at the time?
Well, not when I first arrived, I didn't.
Okay. But did your grandfather or grandmother eventually tell you that this happened?
Yes, my grandmother did.
Okay.
On the same day.
Okay. Now, we talked about how you were planning on going on this road trip. Your first destination was Monterey, eventually Monterey, California, right?
Yes.
And how far was Monterey, California from Wairika, California?
Approximately 7.5 hours.
Okay. And what was the purpose of traveling from Wairika to Monterey? What were you going to do in Monterey?
Monterey was just a stopover because I had friends there, and then I wanted to continue to LA.
Okay. And you say friends there. Who was there?
Matt and Daryl.
Okay. How were you planning to make this trip from Wairika, Monterey, and all the way eventually up to Utah?
My plan was to go to Monterey, then to not Los Angeles, the city, but the area. And then I was maybe going to go to San Diego. That was tentative because John Dixon was inviting me down there, depending on time. I didn't really have a set itinerary. I was just sort of on my road trip going, and I had 3 or 4 days off, and I was glad. So then I was going to cut up through Nevada and Utah, And depending on if I was going from San Diego or LA or Monterey, I was going to either see Lake Powell or Death Valley. I don't know where Death Valley was in relation, so I just MapQuested it and then head to West Jordan. And hopefully, depending on his schedule or time, we were going to see some national parks there.
Okay. A little more specifically, how were you intending to travel to all these different destinations?
Well, I wasn't intending to hit every single one. I wanted to go to San Diego because Hotel Coronado is on the list, Death Valley is on the list, Lake Powell is on the list, the national parks in Utah are on the list, and that was sort of my travel goal at the time. So showing up and photographing it and walking around a little would have counted as a destination and back on the road.
Back on the road, getting back to my question then, how were you intending to go to all these destinations?
Driving?
Physically, right, okay.
Yes.
Did you own a car at the time in May of 2008?
Yes.
And was that the Infiniti we talked about before?
Yes.
Was the plan to drive the Infiniti to all these destinations?
No.
Why not?
I was broke at the time and I wasn't able to make my car payments. I wasn't also unable to keep up the maintenance that's required as far as getting the transmission service, the oil change, that kind of thing. So my Infiniti wasn't in the best road shape. It's also a sport car with a bigger, more powerful engine, and it's a gas hog. So with all those miles, I didn't want to waste all that gas.
Okay. So what were you going to do then in terms of securing another vehicle to drive?
I wanted to rent a more fuel economic car.
Okay. And we heard about you renting a car from the Reading Airport. Do you recall doing that?
Yes.
Okay. How did you come to wind up renting a car at this location as opposed to somewhere that might be closer to you?
Well, I think there are car rentals in Wairika, but I went to, it was either Priceline or Expedia or Travelocity or Orbitz, one of those things. One of those travel websites where you put in your information to rent a car. The only nearest cities that were coming up were Medford, Oregon, and Redding, California. So I was going south. Medford's 50 miles north. Redding is south. I have family in both places, so I thought I could drive my car to either location, park it, and get on the road. So south made more sense.
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
Going south made more sense because I was headed that way.
Tell us then, how did you get to Reading?
I drove my car.
When you made the reservation on the car, do you remember what sort of information you had to provide, be it Orbitz or Priceline or whomever you garnered the car through?
To the best of my recollection, I needed to give my name, probably a phone number, and payment information.
Okay. Do you recall going to the Reading Airport to rent the car?
Yes.
Do you recall talking to Mr. Colombo?
Yes.
To your recollection, how long did you spend at that car rental location speaking with Mr. Colombo?
I would say 5 minutes the first time, and then I came back in another 5 minutes maybe.
Okay. Why did you come in the first time?
You mean, why did I come back in?
Yes.
I came out and saw it was a red car, and so I came back in and asked him if he had a different color.
Why?
I've always been told not to drive red cars. They get pulled over more often.
You saw the documents Mr. Colombo filled out saying that you claimed that the car was filled with smoke. Is that accurate? Or smelled of smoke, excuse me. Is that accurate?
No, he told police that I exchanged the car.
Speculation as to what he told police.
Sustained.
Miss Arias, when you, not what he told police, why did you tell him you wanted a different car?
Because of the color.
You never complained about smoke in the car?
No, I did not.
Okay. And did he give you another car?
Eventually he did, yes.
Okay. After some period of discussion?
Yeah, he said he's never had that request. I'm sorry.
Were you under the impression that he had to come up with some other reason to issue another car to you?
Yeah, he just,
Speculation.
That's her impression.
Overruled.
What was
Yeah.
the answer to that question, Ms. Arias?
yes, just selected something.
He selected something. Okay. When you rented the car, what did you give him? Did you give him your driver's license?
Driver's license and payment information, a debit card, I think.
Okay. Debit card that had your information on it, right?
Yes,
Okay. And there was some discussion about the color of your hair. We saw pictures earlier referencing you to Exhibit 414. Picture of you and Jewel, right?
yes.
Now, we heard Mr. Colombo testify that you had blonde hair when you showed up to rent the car. And recall for us again, when was this picture taken?
I believe it was in May, or I don't remember the date. It was in the spring after I moved to Wairika.
Why don't we have you take a look at the back of the information here? Without telling us the date.
I believe that item is in evidence, and so she can't tell us the dates. I remember correct.
The item in evidence shows that this picture was taken on May 18th, 2008.
I think it said 15th.
15th, excuse me.
Unless I misread.
Does that jive with your recollection?
Yes, it would have been around that time.
Okay. Now, was your hair, to your recollection, substantially similar to this in June, early June, I guess about 2 weeks later, when you rent the car from Mr. Colombo?
Yes,
Now, Ms. Arias, after you rent this car, I guess we should clarify, what kind of car did you wind up with?
I believe I wound up with a Ford Focus.
And I'm guessing it wasn't red?
No, it was white.
Okay. And once you have this white Ford Focus, where do you go?
I went back to my brother's house where my car was parked and I took a nap.
Do you remember about what time of day this was when you, well, after you took a nap, do you remember about what time of day it was when you got on the road?
Late morning, I think.
And on this trip, as you left Redding, California, did you have a gun with you?
No,
Did you have a knife with you?
no,
You have a cell phone with you?
yes,
This Helio that we've seen earlier?
yes,
And did you have a charger with you?
I did.
So tell us what happens next. If you've got your car, you've taken a nap, what do you do?
I hit the road, Interstate 5 South. I forgot I was supposed to meet Gus Searcy in San Jose as well, if the time permitted. But I was very tired. I'd stayed up all night talking with Travis. So I didn't make it to see Gus. I pulled over somewhere. I think it was just in one of the little towns south of Sacramento or just north. I think it was in Corning. And I slept for a while in a McDonald's parking lot. And then I woke up in the afternoon and got back on the road and kept driving until I reached, well, I was going to go to Monterey, but Matt was in Santa Cruz. So he said, meet me in Santa Cruz. So I went to Santa Cruz.
Okay, and where is Santa Cruz relative to Monterey?
It sits on the north part of the Bay Area. I mean, not the Bay Area, the Monterey Bay.
Okay. So close to Monterey then?
It's pretty close.
Okay. You mentioned that you spoke with Travis. This would have been on the night of the 1st, is that right?
Yes, actually it was into the early morning of the 2nd.
Okay. And without telling us exactly what was said, what was the subject matter of that conversation?
What really stands out is we talked a lot about Gordon Hinckley. He was a former president of the church who had passed away that year.
Did that conversation lead to any phone sex?
No.
To your understanding, or did you ever convey to Mr. Alexander that you were going to see Matt and going on this trip to Monterey?
He knew I was going on the trip, yes. And I don't know if I told him about Matt or not.
Okay. When you had this conversation with him about Gordon Hinckley, did you advise him that you were in the midst of this trip or that you were on your way to Monterey?
He knew I was on my way to Utah.
Okay. Was Monterey one of those, the fact that you were going to Monterey, one of those things that you wanted to keep a secret from him, or did it just not come up?
No. I mean, no, not a secret. I don't remember if it came up or not. He knew I was going to head south first and then cut up through Nevada and go to Utah.
Okay. So did you meet Matt?
Yes. And his friend.
What's that?
And his friend.
Okay. And do you remember about the time and day that you arrived in Santa Cruz?
It was evening and it was dark. Not too late because there were still restaurants and bars open.
So what did you do where did you meet Matt and his friend?
To my recollection, it's a kind of a bar and lounge restaurant called the Red Room.
Okay. And what did you do at the Red Room?
We sat around, had appetizers, and then we headed to a karaoke bar.
Okay. Was, just so we're clear, was the purpose of this completely social, or was there any romantic interest in Matt at that point in time?
No, there hadn't been any romantic interest for years and years at that point. We were just friends.
Because you broke up with Mr. McCartney in what year?
2001.
Okay. So 7 years later, you're still friends with Mr. McCartney, right?
Yes.
Okay. So after you go to the karaoke bar, what do you do next?
At that point, I follow him and his friend back to his apartment in Monterey.
His being who? Matt's or his friends?
It was an apartment. It was his friend's parents' house. They lived in one portion of it, and there was an apartment kind of sectioned off that he and his friend rented.
Did you spend the night there?
Yes.
We saw earlier in this trial some banking transactions that you engaged in at a Washington Mutual. Do you remember seeing those?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things that became clear as it looked like, and maybe you can explain it to us, it looked like you had more than one bank account with him. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, after moving to Wairika, I opened a business checking account in addition to my personal checking account that I already had for over a year.
Okay. So these checks that you were writing back and forth, what was the purpose of you doing that in Monterey?
Oh, in Monterey? Well, I didn't do it in Wairika because when I left town, it was way too early. The banks weren't open. I didn't do it in Reading because I didn't live in Reading, so I didn't know where there would be a Washington Mutual. I lived in Monterey for over a year, so I knew where the banks were there because I banked there and in Carmel while I lived there.
Okay, so what was the purpose of, we saw the receipts and the checks. What was the purpose of moving the money back and forth between accounts?
My business made no money, so I sort of borrowed money from myself for my business. And so by doing that, I wrote myself a check and put money into the account so that I could use that money while traveling, because part of the reason that I was going to LA was for the photography, so I would be able to write off part of that trip. And part of the reason I was going to see Ryan was also for prepaid legal, so I could write off part of that trip as well. And my business tax write-offs, I was trying to keep in that account to keep it organized.
Okay. So you could have just pulled cash out of the bank too, right?
I could have, yes.
Okay. Based on the receipts we saw and those sort of things, you had several $100s, at least between those two accounts. Is that right?
I guess it was under 1,000. I don't think it was
Okay.
too much.
All right. In terms of payment for anything you might need, how are you intending to pay for the things that you might need along this trip? Meaning cash, meaning check, meaning debit card? What was the plan?
Cash or debit, not check.
Okay. And how much cash did you keep with you typically?
Just for emergency purposes, over 100. Not a whole lot. I think maybe 160, 80. I don't know. It was close to 100.
Okay.
Something, just in case.
After you spend this time with Mr. McCartney, do you visit anyone else in Monterey?
Yes, the next morning I swung by Daryl's apartment in Pacific Grove, which is right next to Monterey, and hung out with him and Jack for a little while.
Okay. And just in case anyone's forgotten, who is Jack to Daryl?
Jack is his only son.
So do you recall, you said you had breakfast with them, is that right?
Yes, we had omelets.
Okay. And how long did you spend with Jack and Daryl that morning?
Oh, I'd say half hour. We were just hanging out. Jack was getting ready to go to school, and we were just enjoying each other's company.
Okay. And this would have been, do you remember what day this was? Was this the
I
morning
think
of the
this was
3rd or the morning of the
Tuesday.
2nd?
I think it was the morning of the 3rd.
Okay. Did you borrow anything from Mr. Brewer while you were there?
Yes, I borrowed his gas cans.
And how many gas cans did you borrow from him?
2.
Why did you borrow 2 gas cans from Mr. Brewer?
So that I could, well, gas in Wairika at that time was $4.78 a gallon for regular unleaded. This is 2008. It's very expensive. All gas in California is a little more expensive because they have stricter regulations. So going to Nevada and Utah would have been cheaper, so I wanted to fill it up.
You didn't tell him keep this a secret?
No.
Okay. When you were having breakfast with Daryl and Jack, do you remember telling Daryl that you were going to go to Mesa?
I had no plans to go to Mesa at that point, so no, I wouldn't have told him that.
Okay. After this, after you were going to leave Daryl's home, or apartment, excuse me, where were you planning on going next?
To Salinas.
And what was in Salinas?
I wanted to get my nails done so they looked good because I was going to go see Ryan.
Okay. Did you end up going to Salinas?
Yes.
And where is Salinas relative to these other towns? Is this a nearby town or?
Salinas is probably, I think, 20-something miles from Monterey. It's not far.
Okay. It's north, south, east, or west?
It is east. It would have put me on a better highway too to go south.
What's that?
It would have taken me to Highway 101 too, because Monterey is Highway 1, and for traveling distances, you don't want to do Highway 1.
Well, let me ask you this before we get on to what happened in Salinas. What was, assuming Salinas wasn't the ultimate destination, was the plan to go to Salinas and then straight to Utah, or were you going to go somewhere else after Salinas?
I went to Salinas, had to wait because there was a wait at the nail salon, got my nails done, and then drove to Pasadena.
Okay. So Pasadena was the ultimate destination for you that day, right? Or at least it was one of your next stops.
That area. I was looking to hook up with Daryl's sister because she just had a baby, and I was trying to add infants to my portfolio.
You mentioned being in Salinas and having to wait at the nail salon. Did you go anywhere else while you were in Salinas?
I think I did, but it escapes me right now.
Okay.
Sorry I didn't sleep last night. My memory's shot.
Check, not responsive.
Sustained. Yes, the response is stricken. The jury is ordered to disregard the last response.
Did you wind up meeting with Daryl's sister?
No.
Why not? What happened?
She didn't return my calls. It was something we had tentatively planned, and she never returned my calls. She did, but it was the next day. So it was too
Okay.
late.
And when you were calling her, was this from Salinas or were you in Pasadena? Where were you when you were calling her?
I think I called her once the day before I left Wairika to remind her that I was coming down, and then again as I got closer to Southern California, and then again when I was in Pasadena, I think.
Now we're referring to as Daryl's sister. What's her name?
Laura?
Okay. So you make attempts to call Laura. You don't succeed in making contact with her, at least that day. What do you do? What happens next?
At that point, I was going to just hit the road and drive up toward Utah, probably crash somewhere in between.
Okay, you mentioned earlier that there was a possibility that you were going to go to San Diego. What happened there? Is there a reason? Did you end up going to San Diego?
No, San Diego was out at that point.
Why?
It got late, and sometimes I try to cram more things in that is realistic in my trip, thinking I can just do it because I've done road trips all my life, and I just figured cram more in, and San Diego wasn't feasible because it was much farther down.
Okay. So you're in Pasadena, and you decide the next step in your journey is to start going to Utah. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So what do you do in Pasadena to prepare for going to Utah?
I went to Starbucks. I went to, I think it was Arco, because they had cheaper gas. I filled up the tank and I filled up the gas cans also.
You said you went to Starbucks. Did anything of note happen at Starbucks when you were in Pasadena?
Yes.
What was that? Describe it for us.
I went in, there was a big wait. It was a long line. It was kind of a busy Starbucks. I got a strawberry frappuccino, and as I was walking back out to my vehicle, I noticed some skaters hanging around near there, and they were all skating off, kind of laughing as I was walking toward my car.
Did you see any damage to your car?
No.
Okay. So at this point in time, you have your car full of gas, you have your gas cans full of gas, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the plan is to go to Utah, right?
Yes.
Okay. And is this, we heard testimony earlier that you had called Mr. Burns and told him you were on your way to Utah, right? Do you recall that?
Yes, right before I had gotten on the freeway.
Okay. Was it your intent at that point in time to go to Utah?
Yes. Maybe Death Valley first, but in that direction.
Did you go directly to Utah after you talked to Mr. Burns?
No.
Why not?
I had been talking to Travis intermittently throughout that time, and the weeks prior when he discovered that I was going to Utah, he started saying, "Why are you going to Utah? Why are you going to Utah when you're going there this summer?"
Sustained.
Was Mr. Alexander questioning why you were going to Utah?
Yes.
Was it your understanding that he didn't want you to go to Utah?
I don't know. I know he wanted me to go somewhere else, but I don't know if not Utah. I don't know how he felt about that.
What's that?
I know he wanted me to go see him, but I don't know that he was, I don't know how he felt about Utah, except that he was suspicious of it.
Okay. You felt as if he was suspicious of Utah and he wanted you to come see him.
Yes.
And you say these are conversations you'd been having periodically throughout the course of these days on your vacation. Is that right?
Prior to the road trip and during.
And what?
During.
Okay. Did you speak on a daily basis during the road trip?
We spoke on the 2nd and the 3rd. Yes.
Okay. So, going back to what we were talking about earlier, you've got the car full of gas and the gas cans, you're going to Utah. You tell Ryan you're going to Utah. Why do you not go straight to Utah?
The very last time I called Travis, it was kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. He had been very sweet. He had been guilting me, kind of making me feel bad that I was taking this big trip and that I wasn't going to see him. And we had been trying to hook up, and he kept being busy. So he had to postpone his plans to come to Northern California. Since I was driving south, he wanted me to come to Mesa. I told him no the first few times, During one conversation, he became angry. During the others, he stayed calm, but he has this way of like talking in this really sweet voice, kind of like baby talk, and making me feel guilty. And he sounded very sweet. And so when I called him one more time, it was just like, all right, I'm going. So I went.
Okay. Did you ever call Ryan Burns to say, well, I'm not going to be up there, I'm going to be late, anything of that nature?
Prior to calling Travis and deciding to go to Mesa, I called Ryan and let him know that my phone was dying. So I wanted to turn off the battery to preserve the juice, turn off the phone to preserve the battery. And he said, that's fine. So I had started to turn my phone off, but then I called Travis one more time.
Objection on response. Did she tell him?
She explained she did. What did you do after you called Mr. Burns?
I started to look for the freeway, and as I was calling Travis.
Okay. Did you, during the last conversation, phone conversation with Mr. Alexander in Pasadena, did you advise him that you were coming to Mesa?
That final phone call I did, yes.
And we had talked earlier when you left Redding, California, that with the rental car, that you had a car charger with you when you started off to Monterey. Was that car charger not with you when you were in Pasadena?
I couldn't find it. I called Matt to see if I'd left it at his house. He didn't answer. I called Daryl to see anything, if I brought it there, if there was one there. He didn't answer.
Okay. So you couldn't find it?
I couldn't find it. And my battery was getting low. I didn't want to be without cell phone service or gas in the middle of nowhere driving across the desert in Nevada.
Okay. When you left Pasadena for Mr. Alexander's home in Mesa, did you have a gun with you?
No,
Did you have a knife with you?
no.
What color was your hair?
Kind of like an auburn brown, I'd say.
Didn't stop to dye it along the way?
No.
What time in the evening, to your recollection, did you advise Mr. Alexander that you were going to come to Mesa?
What time in the evening? Oh, I don't remember precisely, but it would have been somewhere after 8 and somewhere before 10 p.m.
Based on your conversation with him, did you have the understanding that he would be expecting you sometime that night or the next morning?
Yes, he said he would wait up.
And how long a drive? You had told us earlier that you'd driven out to Travis's home before. Do you know how long a drive it is from Pasadena to Mesa?
I estimated it to be about 6 hours.
Okay. And this vehicle you were using, do you recall how far you were getting on a tank of gas?
No, but it seemed to go really fast by the way I was driving.
Okay. Between Pasadena and Mesa, did you need to stop for gas?
Yes,
Okay.
a few times.
And did you buy gas or did you use the gas that was in your cans?
No, I bought gas.
And how did you buy gas?
I bought gas, I had to stop at Desert Center, I bought gas there, and then I had to stop again in Buckeye, and I got gas there, I think at the Shell.
And how did you pay for that gas?
I don't remember. I mean,
Okay. So you stopped for gas twice?
yes.
Okay. So tell us, do you remember about what time you arrived in Mesa?
It was still dark, but it was early morning, maybe around 4-ish.
And is this on the 4th of June, 2008?
Yes.
When you pull up, did you go to Mr. Alexander's home?
Yes, I did.
When you pulled up to Mr. Alexander's house, where did you park your rental car?
I parked it in the same spot I always parked the car when I went to his house, which was the center spot in the driveway.
Do you recall there being other cars in the driveway?
I don't remember specifically. I wasn't really paying attention to that.
Okay. When you pull up to the house, what do you do next?
Well, it was that time of the night, so I went around to the side, into the side entrance, like I always went. Into the backyard, into the garage, and through the laundry room, and then into the house.
Okay. Did you have any luggage with you?
Yes.
And what did that consist of?
I had brought a suitcase, a backpack, my purse, and my laptop.
And you say suitcase, is this a big suitcase, a small bag? What did you have with you?
It's a suitcase, but it's like a carry-on size. It's not really big.
When you went into the home, did you bring these items with you, or did you leave them in the car initially?
I think he came out and got them for me, so I just went inside.
What's that?
I just went inside.
Okay. When you arrived in Mr. Alexander's home, did you have a gun with you?
No,
Did you have a knife with you?
no.
You were just telling us, you said you walked in the house through a side gate, is that right?
Yes, the backyard.
Okay. Was that typical of how you would enter the home?
Only at night because he locked the front door. I mean, I had a key, but I didn't have one this time because after moving back to Wairika, I took it off my key ring.
Okay. Why wouldn't you just knock on the front door?
I had always just come and gone without knocking. So, especially when I was expected, I don't know. It was just
Okay.
easier to just walk in.
All right. And did Travis greet you at the door?
No.
Describe for us what happened when you entered the home.
I came into the house, and after leaving the laundry room, you go left, and his office is on the right. So the light was on and the door was open, so I peeked in there, assuming he was in there, and he was.
What was he doing?
He had his back to me, and he was on his laptop watching music videos or something on YouTube.
Okay. Did he see you initially?
No.
You were still expected in Utah about what, 11 that following morning?
I didn't name a specific time, just sometime Wednesday. That was my goal.
Well, when you talked to Ryan Burns, you told him about 12 hours, is that right?
I didn't know how long it would take to drive to West Jordan, or if I would even stop on the way to see another place on the list first.
You got to Mr. Alexander's home. He's in the office. You say watching YouTube videos, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is he by himself?
No, he's with Napoleon.
And Napoleon is whom?
His dog.
Saw Mr. Alexander on his computer sitting in his office with his back to you. Did you shoot him?
No,
Stab him?
no.
What happened?
I thought he looked cute sitting there at the computer. He was watching really dumb videos. He was just sitting there, so I just stood in the doorway looking at him for a minute. And Napoleon was laying down, so he didn't really notice me at first. And then after standing there for like maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute, Napoleon noticed me and he barked and came over and I petted him, and that's when Travis turned around and got up out of his chair and came over to greet me.
You said silly videos. Could you describe these for us? Did you see them or?
To the best of my recollection, they were like people, but they had boxes or something on their heads, or foil, some kind of foil all over their bodies and on their heads or something. I'm trying to remember the best as I can.
Okay. So, what happens when Mr. Alexander sees you there?
He got out of his chair and came over to the doorway. I was inside the room now, but just still standing by the door.
Okay. Without telling us what he said, does he say anything to you?
Maybe he greets me. I remember more what he did rather than what he said.
What's that?
I remember more what he did rather than what he said.
Okay, well, what did he do?
He had a big smile on his face and he kissed me on the lips.
Would you describe this kiss as a romantic kiss?
Definitely romantic.
Would it be a sexual kiss?
With his body language, in addition to that, maybe. Yeah, but the kiss was very warm and kind of sensual, but not overly passionate or anything.
When you said it was sexual based on his body language, what do you mean by that?
He had his hands around my waist, sort of on the top of my butt, and he was pulling me into his body.
At that point in time, did he say anything to you that indicated he wanted to have sex?
I don't recall anything specific at that moment in time.
Okay. So he greets you with this kiss and this contact. What happens next?
He wanted to show me more YouTube videos, so we watched some of those for a little while, and then we went into the living room. He had just gotten a brand new punching bag since I'd moved. I hadn't seen it.
Well, let's back up a bit. These YouTube videos that he was showing you, you mentioned the people dancing with boxes in their head. Was it more similar videos or was it something different?
They were similar. I don't remember all of them.
And you mentioned this punching bag. Where was this located?
It was on the tile in the, I guess it would be called the family room or living room, near the kitchen. It's all an open floor plan.
Okay. And well, tell us what happens when he's showing you this punching bag.
He was really proud of it, something he had just purchased, and he was punching it, showing off.
When he punched it, did that frighten you?
I mean, I think something had crossed the back of my mind, but he had been very nice, so I wasn't overly concerned about it, but he could punch it and send it flying a few feet over across the tile and then punch, and he would follow it around the room and he could punch it that way. And it just kept moving and moving and moving.
What do you mean something in the back of your mind?
Because he's very strong.
But you also said, but he'd been very nice.
Right.
So when you saw him hitting this bag, was there a part of you that was scared?
Probably a little apprehensive, but he was in a good mood, so I brushed it off.
Okay. So after he punches this bag in the hallway outside the office, what happens next?
We went into the kitchen. I got some water. I wanted to go to sleep. I was exhausted from driving. So we stayed in the kitchen a few minutes. He seemed a little disappointed that I wanted to sleep, but not in a bad mood or anything.
Well, while you were in the kitchen, did he indicate a desire to have sex with you?
Yes, and insinuated. It wasn't direct, but it was already implied.
And you, from what you're telling us, you didn't want to because you were too tired, right?
No, I wanted to go to sleep.
Okay. At the point in time when you're going to sleep, you mentioned your luggage. Where are all these items? Are they still in your car, or they made their way into the house?
Eventually, they made their way into the house. I don't remember what point, but he went and got it for me.
Okay. Before you went to sleep?
Yes.
Okay. When you went to sleep, where were you? Did you and Travis sleep in the same room that night?
Yes.
And which room was that?
His bedroom.
Okay. When you were interacting with Travis when you were in the home, did you ever get any indication from him whether or not anyone else was in the home?
After we went in the bedroom, I think I asked if his roommates were home because it's an indication of how quiet or how loud we have to be.
Based on that, was it your understanding that you were the only two in the home, or were you of the understanding that his roommates might be home?
There was somebody else home, and I don't think all of his roommates were home.
Okay. So do you remember about what time you and Mr. Alexander went to sleep that morning?
Somewhere around 5:30. It was starting to just get light out a little bit.
Do you both, you said you slept in his bedroom, did you both sleep on his bed?
Yes.
Do you remember who woke up first?
I did.
Do you remember about what time of the day that was?
I woke up around 12:30 and laid there for a while because he was still sleeping.
Okay. So Mr. Alexander was sleeping in the bed next to you, right?
Yes.
And your bags were in the home, right?
In the bedroom.
In the bedroom. Did you get up and grab a gun and shoot him?
No.
Did you grab a knife and stab him in the bed?
No.
What happened?
I laid there for a while with Napoleon, Travis sleeping, snoring very lightly, and then he woke up around 1 o'clock, and we got up at that point.
Okay. You say that you got up. You mean Travis woke up?
Yes,
How long, if you could estimate for us, were you awake before Travis woke up?
it felt like 20 or 30 minutes.
Okay. Apart from laying there with Napoleon, did you do anything else in those 20 or 30 minutes?
Just laid there, awake.
Okay.
I think I went to the bathroom or something.
Okay. So based on what you're telling us, if you woke up about 12:30, Mr. Alexander would have woke up around 1 in the afternoon. Is that accurate?
Yes,
When he woke up, what did you and Mr. Alexander do?
we engaged in sex.
When you say you engaged in sex, did Mr. Alexander, when he woke up, did he express a desire to have sex with you?
Yes. Not immediately. He got up, brushed his teeth, that kind of thing.
Okay. When you went to Mesa, did you have the expectation, or were you assuming that when you went there, that part of the activity would be to have sex with Travis?
Yes.
Why did you have that impression?
Because it was just our thing at that time. It was pretty obvious. I wasn't going to go there, stay the night, and not do that, I guess.
Why not? You weren't dating at the time.
I wasn't sleeping with anybody else at that time.
What do you mean by that? Because it doesn't necessarily mean that you had to be sleeping with him, does it?
No, but he was the only person I'd been with for the last 2 years, so, or almost 2 years. So it still felt like, I don't know, just something I was used to.
Something you were supposed to do?
Used to.
Did you feel like it was something you were supposed to do?
Yeah. I mean, since I'd showed up.
Ladies and gentlemen, 3:20 in the jury room. Please remember the admonition. You are excused. Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Mr. Nerman, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Arias, a few moments ago, you were telling us about how you, when you arrived at Mr. Alexander's home after 4:30 in the morning, that you went into, initially met Mr. Alexander in his office. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit, entered as exhibit number 40. Is that the office to which you were speaking of meeting him?
Yes, the door would be to the right.
Okay. And exhibit 36, is this also, is that also the same office?
Yeah, that's from the doorway where I was standing.
Okay, so the vantage point there is from the doorway, you walking in Exhibit 36, and Mr. Alexander was seated with his back to you at the desk?
Yeah, there's a desk, behind this desk, there's another desk, and was at that desk.
Okay. And Ms. Arias, I'm going to show you what's been entered as exhibit number 33. You mentioned earlier a punching bag. Mr. Alexander punched in front of you and slid down the hallway. Is that the punching bag we're speaking of?
Yeah, he punched it around the room, not just the hallway.
Was it noisy when he did that?
It made a pretty big impact.
Okay. And Ms. Arias, before we took the break, we were speaking about the fact that when you woke up from your sleep, Mr. Alexander woke up, I should say, that the two of you had sex. Was it just a matter of having sex, or was there more to it than that?
Both, I guess. It just depends on, we had sex more than once that day.
Okay. Well, let's talk about, you said the more to it. What happened after he woke up and said that he wanted to have sex? What did you do?
He wanted to tie me up. Again, he had done that once before and it didn't work out. So it didn't work out because the rope he had was actually like a twine. It was very scratchy and it hurt my wrist. So he had a different rope this time that was a smooth rope. It was like a decorative rope. I don't really know how to describe it. It was green and gold.
Let me ask you this, in terms of description of it. Let me show you what's been marked as, entered, as Exhibit 268. That look like the rope you're describing?
That is part of the rope, yes.
That is?
Yes, I would, yeah, it is.
Okay. And so we have a vantage point on this showing you Exhibit 269. That appears to be the stairs, some stairs, correct?
Yes,
Did Mr. Alexander have more than one set of stairs to his home, in his
No.
home?
just one set. Well, unless you count the steps, but just those.
And where did those stairs that we're seeing in Exhibit 269, where did they lead?
They led upstairs to the other three bedrooms. Well, there were 3 bedrooms and plus the master and the loft.
So Mr. Alexander's bedrooms as well as the other bedrooms, is that right?
Yes, his is on the left at the top of the stairs.
What's that?
His is on the left at the top of the stairs.
Okay. So this rope, this smooth tannish rope that we just saw, he ties you up with it? Is that correct?
Check me.
He did. He tied me up.
And when you said he tied you up, where did he tie you up?
The bed.
And what did he tie you up to the bed, or just explain to us what he did?
No, his bed is a sleigh bed, so it doesn't have like posts or anything to tie the rope to. What he did is we measured out, it was a really long rope, it was all wound up. So we unrolled the thing, it was almost from the length of the bedroom into the bathroom, and he measured it out and cut it in the bathroom. And then he created 2 nooses at the end of the rope for my wrists and slid it behind the back headboard of the slave bed so that when you pull it, it's like you're tied up. But the nooses weren't so tight that I couldn't slip out of them if I needed to.
Did you want to be tied up?
It's not my favorite, but it's not unbearable.
He wanted to tie you up.
Yes.
And based on what you said, you could bear it, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I could.
So when he ties you up, are you clothed or at all?
No.
When he ties you up, is he clothed?
I don't remember when his clothes came off, but no.
Okay. He wasn't clothed when he tied you up.
I think he might have had his garments on, but his clothes came off.
And by garments, what do you mean garments?
The temple garments that are worn top and bottom. They're worn by some members of the church. They're worn all the time, typically.
So to your recollection, when he ties you up, he's wearing his sacred garments, right?
I believe he was still dressed in those, yes.
Okay. So you're naked, you're tied to the bed. And just so we're clear as well, are your legs bound or just your hands?
Just my wrists.
Okay. What happens next?
He wanted to give me oral sex.
He wanted to give you oral sex?
Yes.
Miss Arias, is this hard for you to talk about?
Approach.
Are these sexual subjects difficult for you to talk about?
Yes, this one particular.
What's that?
Yes,
But you said something else.
this one in particular,
Why?
because of how the day ended.
Okay. So you say that he wanted to perform oral sex upon you. Did you allow that?
Yes,
Why?
because we were doing that consensually.
Because why?
We were doing that consensually.
Right, I understand that. But given where you were in your relationship, why was that okay with you? Because it had happened before?
I guess because I was still monogamous when it came to who I was intimate with, and it was still the same person.
Did you not feel like you could say no?
I might have been able to, but that didn't really cross my mind.
You didn't want to incur his wrath, right?
Objection made.
Were you scared of incurring his wrath?
I was more worried at that point about disappointing him. He seemed very happy to see me the night before, and I wanted to go along with what he wanted to do because it just,
Because why?
he liked those things, and I mean, typically I liked most of those things, but that's why.
Okay. So your wrists are bound and he performs oral sex upon you. Do any other sexual acts take place while you're tied to this bed?
No, I asked him to stop because he hadn't shaved and it was scratchy.
And did he stop when you asked him?
Yes.
After he stopped performing oral sex upon you, what happened next?
Oh, we ditched the rope idea because I don't know, it wasn't doing anything for me. I don't know about him, but
Before you move too farther, you say you ditched the rope idea. What happened? What happened to the rope? How did you become untied from the bed, and what happened to the rope?
well, I was able to slip my wrists right out of it, so I did that. We took the rope from behind the headboard and tossed it on the carpet for the time being.
On the carpet near the bed?
I don't really remember, more toward the dresser.
This rope, when Mr. Alexander before he tied you to the bed, I think I neglected to ask, did he have to cut this rope?
Yes.
Did you observe him do that?
Yes.
To your recollection, where did he do that?
He cut the rope. He measured it out somehow in the bathroom because it was really long, and I was holding one end in the bedroom, and he rolled it out on the other end. And he cut the rope in the bathroom, and then he tied me up after that.
You saw him cut the rope. How did he cut the rope? What did he use?
He used one of the knives from his knife block in the kitchen.
Do you recall once he cut this rope where he placed this knife?
It would have either been in the bathroom or maybe he brought it back to the nightstand.
You don't recall which?
I don't recall. It would have been one or the other, but I don't recall which specifically.
Okay.
There are a lot of gaps that day.
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
There are a lot of things that I don't remember that day.
Okay. Moving back to the part of the story where he unties you, or you ditch the rope, as I believe you said. What happens next?
At some point there are pictures, but we also had regular sex also.
You said at some point there were pictures. Do you recall? And was before we go too far, I should say you said regular sex. What do you mean by regular sex?
Like regular vanilla sex.
Regular.
Like just vaginal regular sex.
Okay.
Nothing too out of the ordinary, just normal, you know.
Okay. Do you recall if that was before or after the photographs that were taken?
I don't recall, but I think it was after. I'm pretty sure it was after.
I want to show you some of these photographs. that had previously been admitted, beginning with Exhibit 168. Can you see that there in your
Yes.
monitor?
Yes.
Your hair, the hair on your head. How would you label that particular style?
Braids.
Why was your hair in braids that day?
He liked my hair in braids.
What was your understanding of why he liked your hair in braids?
He just said it was hot.
Showing you Exhibit 164. Can you see that? Can you look at that? Is it hard to look at?
Objection.
Sustained.
What do you think about when you see that picture?
Objection, Rose.
Goes to a state of mind under that.
Overruled.
What a stupid idiot I was.
When you were posing for that picture, I guess, you'd say, was this something that you were comfortable doing?
It felt awkward.
What's that?
It felt awkward.
Why did you do it? Why did you participate?
He got a new camera that he was excited about and he wanted to play around with it.
And playing around with it meant taking these pictures?
Yes.
What was that, Miss Arias?
Yes.
Referring to the picture, it appears that there's no pubic hair in this picture. Why?
Travis didn't like hair. He didn't even like it on his own body.
So you removed it at his request?
Yes. I had a
Objection. Sensitive question.
Showing you what's been entered as Exhibit 165. You take a look at that. Was it your idea to pose for that picture, or did Travis suggest that that take place?
He suggested all the poses.
Is that something you really wanted to do?
That was not my favorite part of the day. No, I didn't want to do that. But, I mean, I didn't disagree.
You didn't voice any disagreement. Would that be a more accurate way of putting it?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked Exhibit 169. Is this also a picture Travis suggested?
Yes.
And you complied with his suggestions?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that he was directing you what to do and how to pose?
Yes.
And you did this, you posed in these positions. Well, why did you pose in these positions for him?
He asked me to.
That's it? That's all it took?
I'd sent him pictures before on my phone, but they weren't like those. So he was being the photographer this time.
Did you ever express to him that you didn't want to take pictures of this nature?
On prior occasions, I did express that many times.
But not this occasion?
No.
Was he happy when you were allowing him to take these photographs?
He seemed a little bit thrilled.
A little bit thrilled, is that what you said?
He seemed really into it.
Okay.
I don't know if happy would be the word, but he was into it.
Okay. Did making him happy on June 4th, 2008 make you happy?
I don't know. I don't know if happy would be the word.
What was the plan with these photographs? Were they to be kept? Would they be deleted? What was the plan?
He wanted to take them, review them, and then delete them.
There were a few other photographs found that day, drawing your attention to Exhibit 167. Actually, let me draw your attention looking at in time to Exhibit 166. Can you explain what was happening when this photograph was taken?
Yes, he wanted to get a picture of us having sex without somebody holding the camera. So he told me to put it on the timer. And I was trying to figure out the timer and I couldn't figure it out. And he said, just figure it out. It was sitting on the nightstand next to the bed.
Okay. So what you're telling us is you were trying to set the timer and it went off inadvertently? Or when you
Yeah.
weren't expecting it, I guess?
Right.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 167. Looks like it's a couple minutes later. Was this another attempt to photograph the two of you having sex?
I can't remember if we were trying to get the timer for the photo or if we were trying to do a video or what.
Okay. You mentioned trying to do a video. Was there contemplation of you and Mr. Alexander making a video that day?
Yes.
a video of what?
A video of us having sex.
When you went to Mesa, Mr. Alexander's home, did you do so with the intent of making a sex video with him?
No.
Was it your idea or Mr. Alexander's idea to make this video?
It was his idea.
To your knowledge, was that video ever made?
Yes. I think we used my Olympus.
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
I had an Olympus camera that I'd had for a few years. We took it on all our trips. It had video on it. I think we ended up using my camera because we couldn't figure out the video on his or the timer or something.
And how do you know that that video was made? Did you
We
make
reviewed-
it? Did you watch it?
We reviewed it, I believe, and then deleted it.
You deleted it that day?
Yes.
After, well, we just saw the pictures where you were attempting to take photographs or take a video of you having sex. Was this video you made of the two of you having sex, was this directly after the pictures we just saw of Mr. Alexander?
I'm sorry, will you repeat that?
Sure. We just saw the pictures of Mr. Alexander lying on the bed. You recall that?
Yes.
And you said you were trying to make a video with his camera, but you ended up making one with your camera, right?
I think
Okay.
I had my camera too.
And what I was asking is, did that come directly after or minutes after the pictures we just saw?
It was around the same time.
Okay. So after the pictures we just saw of Mr. Alexander, what you're telling us then is that the two of you did have sexual intercourse, right?
Yes.
And you described it earlier as this plain old vanilla sex, but it was more than that, wasn't it? Because you were videotaping it, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
So after you and Mr. Well, let me ask you this. The photographs show that all this occurred about 1:32 in the afternoon on the 4th. Did you have an understanding at that point in time whether any of Mr. Alexander's roommates were home?
My understanding was that nobody was home during that part of the day.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to speak up, Ms.
Sorry.
Arias.
My understanding was that nobody was home during that part of the day.
Okay. So after the two of you have sex that afternoon, well, let me just verify this. When you have sex that afternoon around 1:45, where do you have sex?
On his bed.
After you have sex on his bed, what do you do next?
I think we watched the video, then deleted it, and then shortly thereafter I got in the shower.
Okay. When you're taking a shower, is Mr. Alexander with you, or do you know where he is?
He's downstairs somewhere, I believe.
Okay. After you take your shower, what do?
I get dressed and starting to get ready to hit the road.
What does starting to get ready to hit the road mean?
Just, I don't know, just getting ready, getting dressed.
Were you
Combing my
already
hair.
packed? Did you need to pack?
I hadn't really unpacked much, just some pajamas, and then I changed my clothes. At one point, the luggage went back in the car. I don't remember precisely when.
Okay. And while you were doing this, when you're doing the things that you needed to do to get ready to leave, to your understanding, where was Mr. Alexander?
First in the kitchen, and then he was in his office.
Where was the first place?
The kitchen first, and
Okay.
then his office.
When you left, you came downstairs and you were putting your luggage back in your car. If you know, where was his bedding? His sheets?
At that point, they were in the washing machine.
Do you know how they got there?
I can't remember who put them in, but I probably did.
Okay. And this was after the two of you had sex?
It would have been after. We typically wash the sheets afterward.
Okay. So you say you're packing your luggage, or you've packed your luggage in your car and you're getting ready to leave. Do you remember about what time of the day that this was when you were packing your car getting ready to leave?
I don't. It was after that. It was after 2, I'm sure, but I don't remember the exact time.
Okay. So after your car's packed and you're ready to go, you said you're dressed. Do you recall what you were wearing?
No. I don't remember exactly. I think I was wearing a tank top and some pants.
Okay. So you've got your car packed and you're ready to leave. What happens next?
I went into the office just to chill with him for a couple minutes. I had CDs that he wanted, had been asking for a while. That I kept forgetting to give to him. They were hanging out in my briefcase for months and months.
Are these music CDs, photo CDs? What are they?
They have pictures on them of our trips that we've taken together.
Okay. And so you're in the office and you're showing him these, or just describe for us what's going on?
I got the CDs out. They looked pretty scratched, which he noticed and got upset about because it was my fault that they were scratched. So he put them in his CD drive, and he was having a hard time bringing up the disk drive on his computer. He said it had a virus. He just had a hard time bringing up the CD for a minute. He kept clicking around the screensaver. When it would go to the screensaver, it was a bunch of little bugs eating up his screen.
Where were you when he was looking at these CDs?
I was laying on the floor next to his chair with Napoleon.
Okay. So you could see his computer screen, but you were on the floor.
Yeah, I could see it if I looked. I was just laying on the floor.
Okay. So when he's looking at these CDs, they're not working. You're on the floor with Napoleon. What happens next?
He finally somehow he was able to bring up the CD on his screen. And most of the images came up as little gray squares instead of photos. And probably because the the CD was scratched. I assume that's why they were like that.
You said they came up as what?
They were, where the thumbnail would be, it was just like a medium to light gray square or
Okay.
rectangle or whatever.
Okay. So just continue. What happened? What was he doing?
He popped that CD out, and then he tried the other one, and he's mad by now because if I would have given them to him a long time ago, like I was supposed to, then they wouldn't have been scratched. So he puts that CD in and tries to bring it up too, and the same thing happens. There are a bunch of files that don't come up, the images don't, and they're just gray.
You were saying he was getting mad. Without telling us anything he said, how were you assessing that he was angry?
His tone had changed, his demeanor had changed, his movements and body language had changed.
Okay. You saw, at this point, you saw signs of anger. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And based on your experience with Mr. Alexander, you had seen those signs before, hadn't you?
Yes.
How were you feeling laying there on the floor, watching his anger rise?
Apprehensive.
Did you get up and run out of the room?
No, I laid there for a little while, and while he was doing this, and then he opened the CD, the disc, and he picked it up and he flung it at the wall, and it ricocheted off the wall and rolled off the desk and landed on my head and hit the carpet.
Now, Ms. Arias, want to get a good sense of where you were at this point in time, showing you again what's been marked as Exhibit 36. Ms. Arias, is the area in which you were laying, is that depicted in this photograph?
Not really.
Okay. Let me show you Exhibit 40. Does that depict the area which you were laying?
It was on the other side of the desk where the shadow is. I was laying parallel to the wall.
Parallel to the wall on the
Yes.
other side?
Yes.
Or on that side? Okay.
On against that wall, sort of against the wall. I wasn't touching the wall, but I
You
was.
say that wall, could you point to where you're meaning? Is it visible?
Yes, the wall there with the outlet or whatever that thing is.
Okay. So you were laying at near the outlet?
Yes. My head was more toward the desk, and my feet were toward the door. Which would have been the other way.
Okay. So you mentioned that he throws this CD that rolls around and rolls towards you. Is that right?
Yes, it rolled off the desk and landed on me.
Okay. Were you then seeing more signs of anger at that point in time?
Yes.
were you still apprehensive, or did apprehension move to something more when you saw more signs of anger?
Yes, it moved to more.
How would you describe that feeling?
I'm worried because I feel like the trip had gone pretty well at that point, and now he's going to get angry, or I've done something stupid again, and the whole trip is going to get ruined. And also, I know he's getting angry because Napoleon got up and left the room, and he always leaves the room when Travis gets mad.
What do you
And-
mean by the whole, you made a comment that the whole trip would be ruined. What do you mean by that?
It was supposed to just be a fun trip for us to hang out, kind of like old times, just get along, just relax. And everything was going fine, and then the CDs were scratched.
Okay. So the CD rolls near you. Are you at this point in time fearing that he's going to be physically aggressive with you?
I don't know that I was consciously thinking of that, but I remember just being a little more tense.
After this CD rolls by you, what happened next?
I stood up and I went to walk over to him to rub his back or something, just to make sure he was okay, and let him know that I still had the pictures on my other drive, my ACOM data drive, but I couldn't access them because that drive was not working at that time. But they were still there, I assumed, and that I would get them for him. And I was going to apologize, and he had stood up, and the chair got pushed to the side, and he spun me around and bent me over the desk and pressed up against me.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Showing you again what's been marked as Exhibit 40. Can you see this area here where my finger's pointing?
Yes,
Is that his chair?
yes,
Okay. So when you said, and I know there's various desks in his office, but when you said you went around his desk, were we talking about this item here?
yes, I was on the other side.
Okay. And you said he grabbed you.
Yes.
Where did he grab you?
On the upper arms, and he spun me around and then grabbed my right arm.
Okay, well, did he grab both your arms?
Yes,
Okay. At the time he grabbed both your arms, could you see his face?
yes,
Did you see anger in his eyes?
yeah, he looked pissed off.
Were you scared he was going to hit you?
I wasn't thinking of that. He'd only done that one time, so I was scared he was going to throw me or something like he'd done before.
So you say he grabbed your arm and spun you around, right?
Yes,
Spun you around where?
right on the desk.
Point to it.
We were standing right about here.
Okay. Now I want to clarify something, because you said he had only hit you one time at that point. But earlier we heard about him smacking you in the face and him kicking you. Right?
Right.
When you say he only hit you one time, but then what are you What are you referring to?
His hands.
Okay. His hand to your face, to your body, is that what you're saying?
To my body. He didn't hit me in the face.
Okay. Just in the side of the cheek, right?
Near the face.
Near the face. Okay. All right. So he grabs you, he has a hold of you in this area here. You said he grabs your arm, one of your arms, and spins you around?
He grabbed both of my arms, spun me around, and then grabbed my right arm and twisted it behind my back.
When you say behind your back, did it hurt?
I don't remember feeling pain.
Did you feel like you could have just walked away?
Not in that particular moment, no.
Why not?
He was leaning his whole body against me, and he was kind of heavy.
And he was what?
Kind of heavy.
Did you say anything? Tell him to stop, knock it off?
No.
Why not?
I didn't want to make him even more pissed off. He was,
So objecting, your feeling at that time was objecting to what he was doing to you would have pissed him off further.
it was possible. Usually when I went along with what he did, he would settle down faster.
Going along with what he did, what he wanted to do, calmed him down? Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, that or groveling or something. He would
Okay,
get less angry quicker.
okay. Well, based on what he did, I guess we can define what he wanted to do. What did he do when he had your arm behind your back?
He pressed his groin up against my butt.
Were you facing in the direction of this desk or against the desk in the back wall when he did this?
I was facing the first way you pointed.
Okay. You were facing the desk.
Yeah, I was bent over the other side of the desk facing that way.
Okay. So you were bent over this side of the desk, right?
Yes,
Okay. And you said his groin area was pressed up against your buttocks, right?
yes,
Were you wearing clothes?
yes,
Was he wearing clothes?
yes.
You mentioned that you were bent over this desk. How did that happen? Did he push you down or what? How did you get into that position?
Yeah, he had my right arm and bent me over.
Okay. Was he saying anything to you? Was he telling you to do a particular thing?
I don't recall him saying, I don't recall what he said, if he said anything.
Okay. So when you're in this position, what happens next?
Well, he kind of does a few thrusts briefly, and then he starts pulling my pants down.
What was the first part of your answer?
He thrusted a few times and then started pulling my pants down.
Thrusted a few times.
Right.
What do you mean by thrusted?
He pressed his groin against me.
Okay. Against your buttocks.
Yes.
Based on that movement, did you believe that he wanted to have sex with you again?
Yes. I could feel that he had an erection.
Okay. At that point in time, did you want to have sex with Mr. Alexander?
Well, yeah, actually I did. It was better than him getting mad. I was actually relieved.
Relieved. And it was better than him being mad. What do you mean by that?
Because typically when he had sex, it was his way of de-stressing, to use his term, and then he was calmed down after that.
What was, you said you were relieved to find out that he just wanted sex. In your mind, what was the more damning alternative? What was the more concerning alternative to just having sex?
I didn't want his anger to escalate to the levels that it had in the past.
What do you mean by levels it had in the past?
His temper, his outbursts,
By outbursts, do you mean physical outbursts?
physical or just screaming either.
So you submit to this sexual intercourse as an alternative to his wrath or anger, is that right?
That would be accurate, yes.
Okay. So after he thrusts against you, based on what you told us before, you don't say, no, don't do this, right?
No, I didn't object.
Okay. What did he then do?
We had sex again.
Did he remove your pants? Did you remove your pants?
He just got him down, like, just past my butt. I don't know. I didn't have, like, jeans or anything on.
Okay. Does he ejaculate?
Yes,
Where?
on my back. My lower back.
What's that?
On my lower back.
You mentioned him de-stressing through this process. Did that then relieve you to some degree, thinking that this was over?
What was over?
His anger?
Yes. I was very relieved. I felt like we avoided catastrophe.
Catastrophe being what?
Just it leading to another fight.
So your mindset on June 4th, 2008 was anything to avoid a fight. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, in that moment, yes.
You weren't able to avoid a fight the rest of that day, were you? Is that a yes or a no?
No. I mean, no, I was not able to avoid it.
Okay. After he ejaculates on your back, apart from feeling relieved, do you feel used, humiliated?
I felt a little bit used when he said, go clean yourself up. But I didn't really dwell on that very much.
Okay. What did you do after that?
I stayed in the bathroom for a few minutes. He was still in his office doing whatever he was doing.
The bathroom, just to clarify, we talked earlier in this trial, there was a bathroom upstairs. Did he have more than one bathroom?
There were 3 bathrooms in the house.
Okay. Which bathroom were you in, one upstairs or one downstairs?
Downstairs, right across from his office.
Okay. When you were cleaning yourself up, could you hear him in his office, or describe for us what you...
No, I had shut the door.
I'm sorry, just to make sure everybody heard this. Did you hear Mr. Alexander while he was in his office when you were in the bathroom?
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't recall hearing him. I don't recall hearing him. That's what I said.
Okay.
Sorry.
When you shut the door and cleaned yourself off, was it then your plan to leave?
I was going to say goodbye to him eventually, but we were still kind of hanging out. Now that he was in a better mood, I wanted to say goodbye, like in a nice way. So I went back in the office and we hung out for a few minutes, and then we decided to go upstairs and do more pictures.
Well, let me ask you a question. This desk, moments before you cleaned yourself up and you went back in the office to talk to him, he had just bent you over the desk and ejaculated on your back.
Objection has to be answered twice.
I haven't finished my question.
May continue.
Were you angry when he did that?
Objection has to be answered.
At this point in time, were you angry?
No, I wasn't angry.
Your hope, you said earlier that you wanted the visit to end on a positive note, right?
Yes.
Objection has to be answered leading.
And this is what
There's an objection.
you, when you went back into the office to talk to him, was it your desire to end this trip on a happy note?
Objection has to be answered leading.
Approach, please. Continue.
After this so-called sex took place and you cleaned yourself up,
Objection is characterization of what sex.
Restate your question.
after he bends you over the desk and ejaculates on your back, you're still looking to end this trip on a good note, right?
Of course.
Like a foundation went right after he did that, asked and answered.
I just,
All right. Just clarify your question.
after he bends you over, ejaculates on your back, you go to the bathroom to clean up. You're still looking for a way to end the trip on a good note, aren't you?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Are you looking for a way to end this trip on a positive note despite all of what he had just put you through?
Objection, leading again.
Sustained.
What are you hoping to accomplish by going in the office after he's done this to you?
I wanted us to part ways on a positive note.
What did that mean to you?
It meant him leaving not angry and me leaving not crying.
Were you crying?
No, not at that point in the day.
When you went back into the office to talk to him, was he angry?
He was a lot calmer. He wasn't angry anymore.
Okay. Did you leave then?
No.
Why not?
We decided to go upstairs and take pictures, more pictures.
You say, we decided. How did that come to pass? Was that something he wanted to do or something you wanted to do?
It's something that goes back several months.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, the Cancun trip was announced in 2007, I think right before I broke up with him. And so he assumed he was going to win this trip. And so he was getting in shape. He had bought this thing around Christmas time called Body Bug, where he measured all his calories and all the calories he took in and all the calories he burned, so that it was just simple plus and minus math so that he could lose weight. And then I think it was in February or March that he received, maybe it was April, that he received confirmation that he was going to Cancun. And so he beefed up his workout even more so that he could shed a few more pounds. The prior summer he was almost 240, and so he had lost a lot of weight. He was down to like a little over 200, and most of it, he had gotten a lot of muscle and lost a lot of body fat. So he was very proud of his shape. His goal was to have a six-pack. He wasn't quite there, but he was close. And when he got to that point, he wanted photos taken of what he had accomplished. So since Cancun was very close, he had almost completely sculpted his body the way he wanted it. It wasn't quite to where he would have preferred, but it was very close.
Well, let me interrupt you for a minute, because you said a couple things of note. You said the Cancun trip was announced in 2007?
Yes, in June 2007.
Okay. Were you ever scheduled to accompany him on this trip to Cancun?
No.
When you drove from Pasadena to Mesa to Mr. Alexander's home, were you under the impression, did you know whom he was going with?
I was under the impression that he was taking his friend's babysitter. He owed them $2,000 or a couple thousand. And they said, if you take our babysitter, we'll call the debt even if you give the ticket to her. That's what he told me.
So there was no inclination on your part or desire or expectation or hope that you were going to go to Cancun with him in June of 2008?
No,
Okay.
never.
You mentioned he wore a body bug. You talked about the things that it measured and that sort of thing and why he did it, but physically, where did he wear it?
On his upper arm.
Okay.
I don't remember which side.
And you saw him wear this on several occasions?
Almost all the time.
Okay. Going back to what has been marked Exhibit 167, Ms. Arias, you mentioned that he wore this body bug on his upper arm. This gray object we see here, is that his body bug?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that there had been some discussion about photographing him before his trip to Cancun because he was proud of his body, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as far as engaging in this particular session or photo session that day, whose suggestion was it that this take place?
I think I threw it out there that day. It's something he had been wanting to do,
Okay.
but
Was this a peace offering of sorts on your part?
Objection made.
Why did you offer him this opportunity?
he was proud of his body, and I just wanted to do something else that would make him happy.
Was this with the goal in mind of ending on a positive note?
Yeah, he didn't get the pictures he wanted, so I offered to do that. I was going to do it anyway, or he was going to at one point. It was going to happen. He wanted those photos, so I just suggested we could do it right now. It was late in the day. I wasn't going to make it to Lake Powell before sunset, so that was out of the trip. So I figured I have time now, technically. I don't have to make it to Lake Powell before sunset. So I have time.
What do you mean he didn't get the pictures that he wanted? You said he didn't get the pictures he wanted. What do you mean?
From the CDs.
Oh. So these pictures you were going to take of him because he was proud of his body, where were these pictures to be taken?
We were going to take them in the bedroom, but we decided to do it in the shower.
And were these to be taken with his camera or your camera?
My camera had just been packed, so we decided to use his camera. That way he could keep the photos and didn't have to worry about me waiting for me to give them to him.
And we mentioned earlier in the day, or you meant just a few minutes ago, really, you mentioned that he had 3 bathrooms. I just want to make sure we're clear. The shower that we're talking about, where these pictures were to take place, where was that shower located?
In the master bathroom.
This might be a good time, Judge, to.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, 10:30 tomorrow morning, so be here by 10:25. Please remember the admonition. Have a nice evening. You are excused.